In the CSS Practice project, you're going to be creating a 3-page website using HTML and CSS. So the first thing that you'll want to do is download the file that's provided here. So go ahead and right-click on it, save link as or save target as, and then go ahead and save it into a folder. You can see that I have created a brand new folder called CSS Practice, and that's where I'll be saving it. Once you've saved it there, you can see that it exists. And then inside of brackets, I'm going to open it up. And instead of opening just that file, I'm going to open up a folder so I can see everything I put into the folder I've created. So I'll go to Open Folder, I'll navigate to the correct folder, and I'll open it up. And then you can double click on the only thing currently in there, which is the file you downloaded. So let's go ahead and launch that. Once the page launches, you can see it's just some HTML. It looks like here's a site title, it's an H1. Here is what is going to be a navigation. Here's a header and some content, and then another header and some content, which is named right column, so we'll be floating this to the right. And then you've got what's going to be a footer down at the bottom. The next thing you're going to want to do, if you look in the instructions, is to insert div tags. So we're going to put divs around the content and give it names so that we know what things are. So let's go ahead and start doing that. This top section, this H1, will be a header. So let's go ahead and surround that in div tags. And we'll give this an ID, since it will only be used once on this page of header. And the next section we will give div tags. And this will be our navigation. We'll give this a class. Class is going to use multiple times per page of nav. Down here on the bottom, this will be our main content, so let's wrap a div around that, and we'll call that main. And then once again, we'll do the same thing. We'll add a div around the right column. Let's call this right call so it makes sense to us. And then we will close that div off. And then we'll go ahead and do one last div or division around the footer. Let's name that footer. And then we'll close that off as well and save it. And there we go. Every one of those sections now has div tags around it, division tags with names to help us when we connect the CSS. At this point, you can go ahead and name those whatever you want as long as it makes sense to you when you're working with the CSS. So next thing we'll want to do is create a style sheet so we can start giving these things rules. So we'll go in and do File New, and we're going to save as style.css in the same folder. You can go ahead and look and make sure it's there, which it is. And you can now see they're both here. Next thing we'll do is come back to the HTML and make sure inside of the link that it's named the same thing, which it's not. I have style1.css. Let's change that to style.css and save it. So now they'll be linked up and it will read the style sheet. Next thing we're going to do, we've given it div tags, we've given things names, is we're going to start creating or formatting this code. So let's start off with the header and we'll just start going through. So in the style, you can see that we've named our header section. We've given it an ID of header. So we'll put hashtag header and we'll start to give it rules. So let's give it a height of 100 pixels. We'll give it a background color. Of some sort of blue. Let's align the text in the center. And let's make the text white. And we can even give it a different font family. And you can customize all this to however you want to make it look. And maybe we'll make it a little bigger. Great. So we've now got a site title. You can see that my site title is pushed down from the very top. There's all this space up here. And that's because the browser has some CSS it's applying. So I'm going to actually go put a reset on this to make it go away. So we will talk to the body. So everything visible, you can see the body has every single thing visible on the page in it. So we're going to do margin, and we'll give that 0. And we'll also do padding, give that 0. And you see that's not affecting it. But what probably is this is an H1. So we'll also go give our H1 a margin and a padding of 0 both as well. And you can see that does it, pulls it up to the very top. If you want the space there, then you can adjust that. Next thing we'll do is go and start formatting the menu, which you can see is this next section here. And we have given it a class of nav. So if you need some reference materials, let's go over to here and take a look at the menu. So if you want to build something like this, here's some code you can reference. So let's go into the style sheet and we'll start talking to the menu. Now it's a good idea to leave comments in your code so we can tell what things are. So it'll be the header section. This will be the nav. And you can do the same thing in your HTML. So let's go here and we'll say that way we know what things are. So for the navigation, let's go ahead and start building this exact same one. So we're going to talk to this unordered list that already exists there. And it looks like it's the same structure. So we've got an unordered list with list items, which this has. So we're going to need to add links, first of all, inside the HTML. So we'll add an anchor tag and then hypertext reference equals quotes. And then close it. So this will be our home page, which we've already named. What have we got this named? CSS Practice. So CSS Practice, normally this would be called index.html. And then here we're going to put in the closing A tag, which looks like it actually already exists on this side, so we'll need to move that. Now we only need to have a 3-page site here. I'm going to actually delete these other ones. And we'll just duplicate this by hitting Control D 3 times and saving it. And let's name this one about us. And we'll name this one contact. And you'll also need to change these. So we don't want every one of these links to go to the home page. So in the future, we're going to name the about page about.html. And then we'll name the contact page contact.html. Let's go ahead and save that. Now we can start giving it some rules. If you look, still looks the same, but these look like they're now links. You can click on them and they'll try to go somewhere that doesn't exist yet. So let's go give them rules. Here under the navigation comment, we will add a .navul so that we can talk to the unordered list inside of the nav class. First thing we'll do is add a list style type. And then we'll add none as the value, which will remove the bullets from the list. Next, we're going to give it a background color of floral white. And then finally, we're going to align the text in the center. So we'll do a text align center. And you can see that puts the text in the center. We're going to now do a new rule. And we will do .navulli. So we're going to talk to the list items inside of that list in that nav class. And we will display inline. And you can see now those navigation items are in a line. And then we'll add a little space between them, adding a margin right of 20 pixels. And now they're spread out a bit. Now we'll add another rule, which will be .nav ULLIA. So now we're going to talk to those links that are inside the list items inside of the list. And we will give it a color of maroon. You can see the links now are maroon. And a font size of 24 pixels to make them a bit bigger. And then we will do text decoration and put none to remove the underlines. And then finally, we're going to add a hover state so that when the mouse touches those, they change. So we'll add nav ULLIA and then a colon and hover. Make sure there's no space between that A, the colon, and the hover. And then we'll do color red. So we'll go ahead and save that, and you'll notice now when my mouse touches those navigation items, they change color. And let's see what is next. So we need to float some of the content, which we can do. So let's start doing that. And then we'll clear the footer. So let's make the footer and the columns. So we've got a main, this main section, we've got a right column which will float to the right. So here is what we'll do for that. So on the main content, we need to give some rules to that. So let's go down here and talk to the main. Add a comment so we know what section we're working with. And this is a class, so we'll put in .main. From there, we need to give it a width so that there's enough room for it to float up next to the main content. So we'll put in a width of, let's go with 300 pixels for the moment. And you see that makes it 300 pixels. I often put in background colors just so I can see how large my sections are, and then you can delete them later if needed. So I'll put in a beige section so we can see what we're doing. And now let's go do the same sort of thing for the right column. What did we name that? Right call. It's got a class of right call. So we'll put in dot right call. And then from there, let's give it a background color to start off with so we can see. And mine isn't currently changing colors for one reason. If you look here, comment should be grayed out like this. Mine is not because I left a space between those two. So as soon as I fix that, you can see the color changes. So now we're talking to the right column and everything in it. We need to now give it a width as well. So let's make this 150 pixels. And they're now stacked block. So we want to make these inline. So I'm going to go ahead and float this main to the right, which pulls it out of alignment and allows us to come up to the side. Actually not right, left. There we go, pulls it there. And then we're going to do the same thing down here. We floated both of those up next to each other. Now if we wanted to, we could float that right, but instead of doing that, I want to just go ahead and change these widths. So let's change the main content to 500, and we will change this left one to maybe 300, and something like that looks good for now. Now you'll notice that the footer is floated up here now as well because the float is affecting it, which we don't want to happen. So let's go look at the footer. It's got a class of footer, so let's go talk to it. So we'll go down here, add some comments. Dot footer, and we are going to clear the flow. So we'll clear both. And you see that pushes the footer down. Let's now give the footer a height and a background color. Floral white is the navigation, so we'll make them match. And you can see that's there. Now we want to center the text. So we'll do a text line, center, and let's make it a little larger text. Font size, let's go 20 pixels. Great, now it's starting to look like an actual site. Now for the sake of time, we're not going to customize this too much, but just know that instead of using pixel widths here, you could use percentages. I could go in here and put in 60% and then go onto this one and put in 40% to equal 100 total, and that would make them fit exactly. And even if I stretch this, you'll notice they still fit. So there's one thing you could do. The other thing you could do is if you wanted to make this so it didn't stretch to the sides forever, we could go in and put a div around the entire site. So here on body, so let's wrap this in one big div. ID equals, we'll call this container. And I'll put this at the bottom. So the entire site is wrapped in this one big container. And then we'll go in here and talk to that container. And it's got a hashtag in front of it. So it's an ID container. And just to show you what this looks like, we'll put a background color on it just for the moment of aqua. You can see it's kind of behind everything currently. And if I put in a width of 80% or a certain amount of pixels, you could do that. Or we could put in a minimum width and a maximum width. But in this case, we'll just put in a maximum width. So the widest it can actually go is, we'll say 1000 pixels. And as I save that, you'll notice I'll stretch it and it stops growing after it hits 1000 pixels. If we wanted to center that, we could then go here and say margin auto, and that will read the amount of space on the left and right and distribute it evenly. So now here's my site, and once I get to a certain width, it stays in the center and looks good. Now I'd go back in and take that background color out, so we don't need to see that. But now you've got a decent looking web page that will actually grow as you make it larger and smaller and then stop at a certain size. Now once you finish that, you can go and put your own content in these columns, add pictures and things like that. When you're completely finished building this page and changing it how you like it, you're then going to duplicate that page 2 other times so you don't have to recode everything. So you'll go here to your CSS Practice, you're going to copy and paste, and if you look in your navigation, notice what you named those things. One of the pages was about.html, one was contact.html. So we'll put in about, and then this one is contact. Oops, this one is contact. And now we've got 3 pages in there along with the style sheet. So now if I click on these, it actually goes to those pages. You're not seeing it because they're identical pages. So you would then want to come into the about page and the contact page and make some changes, add some different pictures, things like that. So if we go to the about page, we can go into the header here and name that about us, go to contact, you can change that to contact, and then let's go to the home page and we will put in a title there as well. And if we go ahead and save all of those, once we go over here and start clicking on this, you'll notice when I go to home, it says our website, about goes to about us, and contact goes here because we've changed those things on each page. You'll continue to make changes to change the content and the right column, add some pictures, and just make it look more like a website. Feel free to adjust the colors and the fonts and things like that. The very last thing that we'll need to do is add a fixed element to the page. So let's go ahead and do that. If you need examples of how to do it, you can look down here on the position property and find your fixed element code to try to help you do that. So the first thing we'll do is go to the HTML of the home page, go to the bottom, and we're going to put this right below the footer. So right below there, we'll put another div, And we'll call this top of page and make it a top of page button. And in the div itself, we'll give it a class of top of page so we can speak to it in the CSS. So now here it is, just does nothing but sit there currently. So if we go to the CSS now, go to the bottom and add a comment. And let's start giving it rules. So this is a class, so we'll put a dot, top of page. And then let's first of all give it a background color so that we can see it. And now we'll give it a width and a height. Let's give it a width of 60 pixels, a height of 60 pixels. And we'll text align center. And currently it's just sitting there in the corner. So next thing that we'll do is actually give it a position of fixed, which currently looks like it does nothing. So now we need to tell it where to sit on the page and stay fixed, so it will stay there. So we'll give it a right of 0, so that way it sticks to the right side of the page. And then we'll do the same thing and put in bottom. Give that 0 so it sits on the bottom of the page. Now it's going to stick there. But I actually want to give it a little space, so instead of putting in zeros, I'm going to put in a pixel width. So I'm going to put in 20 pixels, so it'll push it 20 pixels off the right. And we'll put in 20 pixels from the bottom, so now it's just off of the corner. And you currently can't tell that it works because we can't scroll this page, there's not enough content. So let's go into the footer here, and we're going to add a margin on the bottom of the footer so it pushes it way down so we can scroll. Make sure not to put padding, that'll just make the footer larger itself. So we'll put in margin bottom, and let's put in 2000 pixels, and that should do the trick. Now if we scroll, you'll notice the page scrolls, but the top of page button stays fixed. Last part is we need to make this actually functional. So we're going to go into the home page where that button lives, and it's got a top of page text here with a class. We need to tell it where to go to when we click on it, so we're going to go here to the top to where our header is, and you can see there's already an ID that lives there called header. So you need to have an ID somewhere on your page, so we'll go to the ID of header, and we're going to go into this and we're going to add a link. So we'll add an anchor tag and then href, and then you're going to put in whatever that's named. So in this case it's called header, and make sure you put in the ID symbol before it. So we'll put a hashtag before it, header. So now that will go and find the ID called header, which will be at the top of the page. Close that. We'll move the closing link tag to after the text, and if we save it and go to this page and we scroll down, when I click on that, notice it goes to the top of the page. Once you've changed the content on each of these pages and added pictures and things, you need to turn it in. You'll have multiple files that live inside of your folder. There should be pictures in here, 3 pages, and a style sheet. And you can't turn them all in individually, so you need to zip that folder. So you will come here, right-click on the folder where everything's saved in, and you're going to send it to a zipped folder or compressed folder. That will make a new folder that's zipped, and that way all the files will stay together inside of it. So this is what you'll turn in or submit to Canvas.